What's up, my friends, and welcome to today's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so happy that you are here. We have a special episode today. Father Anthony flew on a plane all the way to Texas just to record this show with me. I'm just kidding. He's here for a week. But we get to record a couple of episodes together, and we are so happy about it. We get to kind of catch up a little bit. We talk about the Trinity. We talk a little bit about the Roe V. Wade decision last week. We hope we have a lot of fun at the beginning, and then we have a pretty serious and heartfelt conversation to close out today's show. We hope that you guys enjoy it. If you do, please hit that subscribe button wherever you are watching or listening today. You guys rock. Enjoy today's show. What's up? Welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, and Father Anthony Sciarappa is sitting next to me. Yay! We did it.
We did it. We did it.
You are in Texas.
I am in Texas. I don't know where in Texas. I assume right smack dab in the middle.
We are pretty smack dab in the middle,
cool.
Which means it'll take you like 9 hours to escape in any direction.
Okay, good.
From the greatest country in the world. I'm so proud of us. We did it.
Yes.
So this is our third time ever recording in the same room together. Well, technically, one of them was a car or a van.
Yes.
That was
yes.
at the Focus Seek or SLS conference or one of the two.
Yeah.
So that was the first time. And the first time that we ever recorded together, I started doing my confession live on the air.
Yes.
And you did what?
I told you to stop.
You did. You refused to hear my confession.
Yes, correct.
The second time we ever recorded together was at your brother's house when I came up last summer to celebrate your 5th priestly anniversary, which, by the way, your 6th was a few days ago.
Yep.
Congratulations. You made it.
I did.
You did another year.
Year 6 down.
And then, so we recorded that. And then after, we went to
the casino.
To the casino.
It was a great time. Yeah.
And now, our third time, you're recording in Texas.
Yes.
So I was pondering this yesterday,
Okay.
and I realized that as a duo, we've gotten holier every time we've recorded together. The first time, you refused to hear my confession. I didn't get my sins forgiven.
Okay.
The second time, we got a little bit more Catholic and went to a casino.
Right. Okay.
And then now we're in Texas, which is the holiest you could possibly be.
I guess so. Interesting. Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. That sounds good. Yeah.
You move a lot.
Sorry, I squiggle. Is that bad for the video? Is that bad?
It is bad for the video.
Okay. I'll stay perfectly still from now on.
I've just never seen you. Well, I mean, I move around a little bit. I've got a little movie chair too. But
Okay.
You're just so excited.
I know. Recording with my friend Taylor.
So, is this your first time in Texas? Have you been in Texas?
No, I've been in. I was in Dallas 2 times for a friend's ordination. That's where I got my cowboy boots, which I didn't bring with me. But anyway,
the least Texas of Texas.
Yeah.
Well, Austin.
Okay.
I like Austin better than I like Dallas.
Yeah.
But, hello, Dallas. How are you? I hope that you are doing well.
Yeah.
But so you have been here before.
Mm-hmm.
But so you've only been here like what, 12 hours?
Yeah, like
16 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
So I picked you up from the airport, and we drove straight to where I host trivia.
Mm-hmm.
You you made a silly observation of Texas on our drive from the airport to trivia. Do you remember what that was?
Everything's so flat.
No, that wasn't what you said, but it's true.
What did I say? Texas, the sky is big.
You said there is so much sky.
Yes.
And I'm like, I mean, you can look up in Pittsburgh. It's the same amount of sky.
It's not the same amount of sky because you're always in a hill or something else. There's always something obscuring the sky. It's like the earth is giving you a big old hug. But here, you're open and just naked to the sky. It's very disconcerting.
Yeah, naked hugs aren't as good as non-naked hugs.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the other things that is always really surprising to people, you're giddy again.
Yeah, it's just gonna happen. Get used to it.
I don't know if I can. No, I'm gonna start doing it. It's gonna distract me. But one of the other things that always surprises people is there are multiple people who have either watched the show or have been involved with the show. So like Allison, Liv, people who have been guests that have arrived here. To the Forte Catholic compound, our national headquarters right here in my house.
Yes.
And they get a little surprised by what they see is not what they get in this room. We've said it before that this is a closet.
It is.
With my water heater and lots of alcohol.
Yes.
So what was your experience of walking in here
Actually,
yesterday?
it's slightly larger than I thought it was.
Okay.
I thought it was like what people were seeing on the screen was basically it.
Yeah.
It's slightly bigger than that, but only slightly. But,
If I gain any more weight, I won't fit.
Yeah, exactly. But it's pretty accurate. You got your water heater over there. You got your alcohol over there. Yeah.
So you were surprised but not surprised.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's like I should describe things for a living.
Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, that's basically it. Good.
Well, good. I'm glad that you weren't super surprised
No.
by it. But you are in Texas for a specific reason. Well, it's really two reasons.
Okay.
But why are you? Explain to the people why you are here today.
So I mean, other than just seeing my good friend Taylor Schroll, we're going on retreat tomorrow.
We are.
We're going to some ranch or something. I don't even know where we're going. Where
we are.
Going?
It will be less flat. We're going to the Texas Hill Country.
Okay.
Which to me, I think where we're going is the prettiest part of Texas. Have you ever seen the often disliked follow-up to Bruce Almighty, the film with Steve Carell, Evan Almighty?
I have not.
Okay, so in Evan Almighty, the first movie is confusing. We're not sure who is God.
Yeah.
It might be Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Some people think he's the devil, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
In the second film, Steve Carell plays essentially a modern-day Noah, right? And he's in this beautiful hill country. I don't know where it is. I'm guessing it's somewhere in LA because that's where they film everything.
Yeah.
But the Texas Hill Country looks very much like that, where we're going to have mass on the top of, like, it's either a large hill or the small mountain. I'm not quite sure. Like, these hills get pretty big, and we're going to, hike up and have mass. It's just beautiful, overlooking this beautiful part of Texas.
Cool.
But every time I'm up in the Texas Hill Country, I think of Evan Almighty because there's a scene when the world starts to flood where you're just looking out over all these hills and all of a sudden just like a tsunami starts filling up everything. So that's what I'm going to think about.
Okay, cool.
But you mentioned that you were coming on your other smaller podcast, correctly speaking.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were coming, and I have a couple of follow-up questions. One, you said that you were looking forward to both, like the vacation aspect and the retreat aspect.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you're here for a week. The retreat is 4 days. But you also immediately said that you were like, I only want to retreat where it's silent and no one's talking and it's just me and praying. And that's not... You do realize that, like, I'm partially in charge of this.
Yeah. It's probably not my like ideal retreats, but also how could I pass up the chance to be on retreat in Texas and also shoot guns? I mean, it's a different kind of spiritual experience, so I'm totally okay with it. So it will be different than my normal retreat.
If any of you have seen Yellowstone, we are going to be out in a land pretty far away from everyone. So
yeah.
The laws might exist, but do they apply?
Yes.
No, but we're gonna like primarily be shooting skeet, which is gonna be fun. So it's cool. So I think I've mentioned these before, but Paul George, who's a Catholic speaker, podcaster, he's been a leader in my life for a long time. He actually gave a talk at the Steubenville conference when I was in 8th grade, which is the weekend that changed my life. Like that took me from not caring at all about Catholicism to being like, wait, it can be cool and fun. Like, I didn't know that,
Yeah.
And Paul was a big part of that. And Paul called me a while ago. And there's this very wealthy man who's a Catholic, and he's a businessman. He's made so much money, and he's very good at business, but he wasn't sure how to like give back. So he hired Paul. He's like, you seem cool. And so Paul has been hosting retreats at these they're like not retreat centers. These are just properties that this guy owns. Yeah. And it's gorgeous, man. And Paul was like, hey, do you want to start leading retreats out here? And I was like, why, yes. Yes, I do.
Like that very much.
So this is the first one that we're doing, and Paul's going to do this one. And then for this one, it's a bunch of guys who have been like really influential in my life. Some of our big donors or both, right? A lot of those people are the same people. And then you got to come too.
Yes.
So it's going to be really simple, which is what I like. So Paul was like asking who's coming, and like almost everybody that's coming is super into their faith. I mean, like, we're not sure about you yet.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people have been, in and around the church for a long time. Other than my Protestant best friend, but he's, I've said before, he's prayed more rosaries in his life than I have. So he's good. Yeah. But we're going to have mass once a day. We'll have adoration once. We'll do like morning and evening prayer. We're going to do a lot of Lectio Divina. and then we'll go shoot stuff and hang out and
Sounds
drink
great.
and eat. Like, So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be pretty relaxing, I think.
I think so too.
Good.
I'm pumped.
You only have to work a little bit, which I'm excited about.
I'm happy to say mass on retreat. That's fine. It's not really a big imposition on me.
Right, for sure. The other thing. Okay, so that's what we are looking forward to. But looking back, just only a week. So last week's show, which you can find wherever you're listening to this, but I don't want to rehash the whole thing. But there were the first two segments. The first segment. There was a little article that came out that I was listed in.
You were
in like paragraph 18 and 19.
Yes, you were technically in that story. Yes.
Technically in the story, yes. Did people read all the way down that far? I doubt it. But I took a screenshot of it and shared it. So there was an article about Catholic podcasts in general, but specifically about two priests from Clerically Speaking, which you are one of. So what? I shared my thoughts on the article last week. But what did you think about being in the Wall Street Journal?
So the reporter Claire, she lives kind of close to my parish, so she's a Pittsburgher, and I was shocked when she first even reached out to me because why do an article on this hobby of mine? It made almost no sense to me. But she did a ton of research. I mean, she calls you hour-long interviews with all these people, and so when it finally came out. It was very nice. I was very happy with it. And it turns out a lot of people read the Wall Street Journal. For the next week, parishioners would be like, "Hey, you're in the Wall Street Journal. Hey, look at you. Oh, famous priest." And I was like, "Yes. Very good, very good." So it's cool. It was cool. It was on the front page. Now below the fold, but still very good. But I was very interested because Wednesday was my day off. I saw it come out on the paper and everything. And I'm playing video games. I'm checking my phone, and I see that your show was released and talking about the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, I have to listen to this because I know you were technically in the story. But this is gonna be a major focus of your podcast. Yeah, I just had to see how you're gonna spin it. It was brilliant. I loved it. Loved every second of it. What is he gonna do? So yeah, it was. It's cool. Ironically, the first episode after the Wall Street Journal, I'm not gonna be on it. It'll be Nick and my brother and Father Harrison. But we'll see. We'll see if we get any bumps from it or anything. But yeah, it's wild. It
is pretty wild. So my entire goal from whenever you texted me that she had called you and then that she might be reaching out to me, my entire goal was to get a mention of the flu, your first ever podcast where you just yell into the ether. And I tried so hard. And so a little bit of backstory. You and I have been friends for a while.
Yes.
And all of my friends I just simply make fun of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's easy. Trying to get a joke about you in the Wall Street Journal would have been great. Father Harrison and I, your co-host, it was a little rocky for that first year because y'all's whole shtick was that you hated each other. And I chose sides. And I'm a loyal person and that's what I do. So I chose your side and therefore I was required to hate him. That's not the rules of Catholicism, but it's the rules of how I do friendship. So it took a while for him to win me over. And then we met in person. Now we're friends. We've been able to go. He's been on the show a couple of times. We've gotten to hang out at conferences and stuff. It is so very funny to me that I tried so hard to get you made fun of, but instead I got Father Harrison made fun of
with the flock of moose.
The flock of moose. The Canadian can't even get the Canadian things right, and that was in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, I know y'all are priests, so ordination, pretty big deal. First mass, first confession that you hear.
Sure,
but being in the Wall Street Journal is pretty cool.
Yeah,
so it's maybe not a top 5, but it's a top tier moment.
I would consider it indeed a pretty cool experience.
Right, not many people get that. Right, there's a lot more priests than priests who have been mentioned in the Wall Street Journal.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if they're in the Wall Street Journal, it's probably not a good reason.
Right, exactly. Another priest in the Wall Street Journal, huh? So it is very funny to me that in this big moment in your co-host life, I got to just kind of put a little dig in there. It was great.
It was good.
It was totally unintentional. I intended to hit you and I missed. And I snapped it. The other thing from last week.
Okay.
I like to have fun on the show. Yeah. And I like to do little thought experiments that may or may not be in line with church teaching.
Yes.
Eventually we get around to church teaching. But last week, I was a little worried about the second segment. Because we talked about the Wall Street Journal, and then I had a thought experiment of when it was, I had been thinking about culpability and like fault when it comes to sin.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if I give an alcoholic a drink, am I partially responsible for that? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
So then I was like, wait a second. Jesus turned water into wine at a multiple day party.
Mm-hmm.
Like the odds of someone getting drunk on that wine are pretty high.
Okay.
So I posited, did Jesus sin?
Right.
Did Jesus make a mistake? Was he somehow, at fault if somebody got drunk on this? Not one person, not one singular person had a problem with me saying that on a Catholic podcast. Not one. But when I was presenting this, I combined two words and into one word. I made a grammatical error.
Yes.
And what did I say? What was the word that I said incorrectly?
You were trying to say the word complicit.
Right.
You kept saying implicit, which is a word, but made no sense in that context.
Right. So I was trying to say, was Jesus complicit in someone else's sin?
Yes.
I was also trying to say, does this implicate Jesus?
Okay.
So I combined those two words into another word, implicit, right? It's a grammatical error. Looking back on it, I don't usually make those kinds of mistakes, but I was trying to say both of those words, complicit or implicated, and I said implicit. Not one single person cared that I was on the edge of heresy. The amount of hate I got for my grammatical error while positing heresy was endless.
Yes.
People I know. You texted me.
I texted
people
you.
were roasting me on social media. Like multiple people were texting me and be like, hey, you made a mistake. I'm like, it's been 295 episodes. Do you know how many times I've been corrected for grammar? That once. In the midst of possible heresy, and no one seemed to care about that. What is wrong with these people?
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. See, your reaction actually justifies the whole thing. Because you often believe you're correct about things.
Always.
Yes, and you also are totally comfortable with kind of pushing theology toward a heretical edge to get a conversation going, right? So you saying maybe Jesus sinned, well, on paper is terrible, but also just knowing you, it's like I know you're just trying to stir up a conversation. Not a big deal.
Hopefully by the end of the segment,
Hopefully,
we'll get back to
yes.
that.
Like obviously Jesus didn't sin. Okay, fine. So
I just had a terrible thing of like somebody tuning in
yeah.
after reading the Wall Street Journal and they hear the posit without the end and they leave and they think I'm a heretic for life.
Yeah, which has probably happened at least twice.
It's fine.
So the fact that we could all like have a gotcha moment for you speaking wrong when speaking is like your entire job, way more satisfying than pointing out your crazy theological opinion. No one cares about that. It's not a big deal.
It's so funny. I feel like I earned this because all I do is make fun of my co-hosts and sometimes guests when they make mistakes. So now, what you people think is that this would would hurt my pride, or that pointing out this mistake.
Yeah, you've
only made me stronger.
Okay,
because now I know I can say whatever I want as long as it's grammatically correct. You think the thoughts that I share on here are unpolished and unthought through? I've thought through them, and I know where I'm going. Now you have all given me the power to say literally whatever I want.
Hey, it's your funeral. I
mean, you want to celebrate it?
I will.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your homily at my funeral because I wouldn't have to hear it.
Would you hear it? It depends. It depends on where you are at the moment. If you were in hell, you might hear it just because it'd be extra torture. In purgatory, you might hear it because it'd be extra torture. Yeah, maybe the only way you wouldn't hear it is if you were in heaven. The Lord would want to save you from that suffering of my homily.
Yeah,
maybe.
Man, my hell is just your preaching. I got to shape up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The last thing that I want to talk about before we move on into our next segment is just we're talking about hope in the third segment. Okay. But I want to just kind of put a little inkling of hope now. I spoke, or I was the MC at the youth conference for the Diocese of Beaumont last week. So the 750 teens in this hotel. It was an absolute blast. Security had to come multiple times. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. But two things. One, we got to have a blast with, I talked about Paul George, somebody that I looked up to for a long time, and now I get to work with him. The keynote speaker was Father Leo Petalinghug, who also spoke at my high school events, and like I've seen him speak, and he's it's another person that I've looked up to, and I got to work with him.
Yeah.
You know, I got to talk with him and all these sorts of things, introduce him. But he also did a cook-off with Bishop Toops, who you know.
Sort of.
Like you read a book.
I've read a book from him.
Yeah. So I kind of knew Bishop Toops previously, recently Bishop in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was, relatively Catholic famous for being an author as Monsignor Toops, and he was, elevated to bishop within the last 2 years, and it was so much fun to watch those two because they were in seminary together.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, they did a cook-off against each other.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. I got to host it. That's on our YouTube channel now, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. You can go check out it was like a 20-minute cook-off. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And the bishop, I've never seen a more, like, and I'm saying this in a positive way, like a childlike, like joy-filled bishop.
Yeah.
He reminded me a lot of Bishop Sam Jacobs, who was really influential in my growing up. He was the bishop for all those conferences that I went to, but he was older, so he still had a lot of energy, and he was great, and he was super loving. But he was more like grandpa to me, right? Like, but Bishop Toops is only about 20 years older than me, if that, and like the fatherliness that he showed of having fun and being silly. Like during the cook-off, he's throwing cheese into the crowd. It's so funny, and like the kids love him. And then like we were there for like the Roe V. Wade decision, which we'll talk about later in the show. So he like literally the decision came down 20 minutes before mass.
Wow.
And he changed his homily and talked about that. It was great, and it was so fatherly and passionate. But the fact, like, I've gotten to travel all over the country and be at DAS and stuff, and like usually the bishop comes because bishops are busy people. They come either for the closing mass or like the awards or something like that, just to kind of make a. He was there for 3.5 days.
That's really cool.
He did not leave, and I just like, it was just so cool to see like a shepherd, a father, like caring about not just as people, but especially as young people, because like that's what I gave my life to was Jesus and serving young people.
Yeah.
So it was just a really cool experience.
It is cool.
Yeah,
it's good.
That's good. Okay, so do not go anywhere. Whenever we come back, we're going to be talking about some stuff. We talked about possible heresy earlier from last week. We're going to try to not do a heresy in the next one.
Ooh,
we're going to be talking about the Trinity. Don't go anywhere. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Be a Heart. They designed some of the greatest Catholic gifts in all of Catholic internet and Catholic land. They sent me this St. Joseph doll, which I absolutely love. My kids like to come and play in the studio, and they found this the other day, and they thought it was for them, and they wanted to take it, and ultimately it will be theirs in a couple of weeks whenever we're done promoting this specific thing. But they are chomping at the bit to hang out with this and add this to their collection. They have a 6-foot Jesus over there. They're looking to, I think it's going to be really funny having this wonderful St. Joseph next to a 6-foot Jesus. But as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, if not, I'll explain it to you. It's got the L for how big of a loser that Satan is, because, St. Joseph is the crusher of demons, the terror of demons. He's got his saw in his backpack on the back. He's got a nice little prayer. So I actually go to a parish called St. Joseph's, and I'm really happy to have this. So what you guys need to do for a gift like this, there's stuff for kids, there's stuff for adults, everywhere in between. So wonderful Catholic things to have around your house for gifts for other people. Beaheart.com, beaheart.com. Visit their summer shop, sign up for their email list, and you will get 10% off your first order store-wide. Beaheart.com. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. This is so much fun doing this in person. It's great.
So much nicer.
Yeah. I got some water between segments. You went and made some more coffee. So it's the timing of this is actually pretty funny because the last 2 episodes of Clerically Speaking, I actually was the guest editor on.
Yes.
And so the timing for me was hilarious because I didn't know what y'all talked about before, but obviously I heard it before it went out.
Yeah.
That's how editing works.
It is.
So,
yeah.
So on Monday night, I've talked about it at length before. I've talked about Foundations. It's this new, essentially like Catholicism 101 thing that I'm leading for our parish, 10-week course, and it's going great. I'm absolutely loving it. But a top one of the top 10 teachings of the church is the Trinity. It's number one.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because like even that note, I've always thought it was like the Eucharist, source and summit of our faith, right?
Yeah.
But the Trinity is actually like the primary teaching, the primary doctrine, the primary dogma of our faith.
Yeah.
And I have been speaking on quite literally hundreds of topics.
Mm-hmm.
I could pull them up and prove it to you, maybe not all of them, but I have documents of just saved talks from the last 12 years. Like, I've talked about everything except the Trinity itself.
Yeah.
And I had to do it for this course.
Okay.
And I learned a lot through it. But before we get into that, the reason that I've been afeared, literally afraid, to talk about this is for two reasons. One, the joke amongst priests and amongst lay people who know priests pretty well is that Trinity Sunday is known as
Heresy Sunday.
Heresy Sunday. And why is that?
Because sometimes priests don't know their Trinitarian theology very well, and in trying to explain the Trinity, actually get the Trinity very wrong. So much so that, like, in seminary, like, everyone was saying that you're going to preach heresy on Trinity Sunday. So yeah, it's a tricky topic.
Quite literally, and this is what I learned. And like, I learned this during this teaching, but the other reason that I was afraid of it was that if the priests are struggling with it, I'll probably struggle with it too. The second thing is, in grad school, I took a course. It was I think it was even called like Foundations or Theological Foundations or something. It was essentially like Catholicism 101 on a grad school level for, so whatever, 501. I don't know what they call it. But here's all these Catholic grad students, pretty close to like cream of the crop, young people, and me, our professor walks in, and our professor, I love him to death, Professor Ron Bolster. Some of you guys would know him as a speaker, professor, or whatever. But he comes from a military background. He was in the Air Force, and then later in his life had a conversion and became super Catholic. But he brought his like military, I want to call it like properisms, or like very Taylor has nothing holding him in place. He has everything holding him in place.
This is a very disciplined, regimented way to go about
right.
classes.
I don't even know those words.
Okay. yeah.
And so he would come in, and like I respected it a lot about him. Like I actually, he was one of my favorite professors I've ever had. I learned a lot from him, but he was pretty disciplined, regimented, those things that I struggle with, right? But I loved this class because it was very structured.
Sure.
Like he came in and like he was in charge, and he would pray the Come Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, kindle them fire. That prayer that I pray before I read theology or read the Bible or whatever came from, that's how he started off every class. So he would walk in, pray that, and then he would teach. And then at the end, he would say, are there any questions? So we did that I think I had him for like 2 or 3 semesters. Okay. And in the final semester that I had with him, he walks in one day, towards the beginning of the semester, but we had a bunch of classes that looked exactly like that. And then he walks in, he prays the prayer, and then he looks at all of us, and he said, explain the Trinity to me. So we're already thrown off because it's like a different structure after having all this structure. We're like, what? Yeah. And then we all do it. We all take turns, and we start explaining the Trinity. He goes, that's that heresy from the 4th century. Next, that's this heresy from the 16th century. Next, that's this heresy from the 3rd century. Next, they literally had a council for that heresy. Next, and so ever since that moment, I've been utterly terrified to speak about the Trinity. And one of the things that I learned about this is that I've given tons of talks on God the Father.
Sure.
I've given tons of talks on Jesus. He's pretty important. You've probably heard of him.
Yeah.
We focus on Jesus a lot in ministry, evangelization, catechism.
I'm personally a very big fan.
Yeah, me too. I've also given a lot of talks about the Holy Spirit. I actually love giving talks on the Holy Spirit because I think he's the most misunderstood or ignored of the 3.
Very underrated.
Very underrated. And then I realized that, like, not like the dumb way of like big guy in the sky with a beard, but like I have prayed. When I pray, it is either it's one of, this is, even now it doesn't really make sense, but it's to one of those 4 people / entities / persons. 4? And I'm saying that on purpose. It's either God. I'm saying, God, help me with this. God, help me. And that's kind of like big guy, transcendent, up in the clouds. He's bigger than me. He's smarter than me, right? Or I pray to one of the persons of the Trinity.
Yeah.
to the Father specifically, to the Son, or to the Holy Spirit.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I say for, not Mary.
It's like, hey, buddy.
Yeah. So even in like my personal prayer, I have never like in my life thought to like pray to God as the Trinity. It's either God as this like big guy, nebulous kind of thing, or one of the three persons.
Yeah. But
never like I never really think about God as Trinity.
Sure.
Because it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
It's weird math.
Yeah.
And I'm freaking terrified. So and then I'm the reason I brought up your show, well, the timing was funny. I gave this talk on Monday. And I start editing y'all's show on Tuesday.
Right.
And Father Harrison starts talking about Trinity Sunday.
Right. We said it. Yeah.
And how, you know, for years he has preached on the theology. He's super smart. He's like little Benedict Jr., Pope Benedict Jr. And it's very funny timing wise. It's literally the next thing I did. I did this thing late Monday night, and then Tuesday morning I woke up and he's like, I'm never going to talk about the theology part of it again. Like in homilies, homilies. He's like, I'm just going to talk about, you know, make it more personal. I'm going to, you know, kind of preach from the heart, talk about how the Trinity, you know, is involved in our lives. And it's so funny because my entire quote unquote professional career, I've done that and never done the theology. This is his first time doing the other, you know, second time. You know, I think he said the last couple of years or whatever. And I'm just like, it's very funny to me that you are being put in this position of you just had to have a conversation about how his way is good.
Yes.
But I just talked about the Trinity, and I had one of my friends who is a much better theologian than I am.
Okay.
Who came to that night.
Oh.
And I did it.
You did it? You did a good job?
I did not do a heresy.
You didn't do a heresy. Congratulations.
She said there was one thing I could have worded better.
Sure.
But which a lot of the wordings can literally get you into the heresy.
Exactly, yeah.
She said I wouldn't have worded it like that, but it wasn't wrong. It could have just been a little, you know, confusing or whatever.
Sure.
Which, fine.
That's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win.
So I did it.
Good job.
So proud of myself.
I'm kind of want to see the talk. Did you write it out?
I did, and we're not going to go through all of it.
Okay.
And we're not going to. I didn't write it out because that's not how good speaking happens.
That's true.
But I do have literally pages of notes.
Okay, cool.
So before we get into my notes, like what is typically like your go-to on Trinity Sunday? How do you not stay? How do you say not a heretic?
Oh yeah. So I'm not going to talk about God as God. Like what does the Trinity mean or anything like that. I try to make it a little more concrete. So what I've been doing the last couple of years is I just preach on the Mass and the Trinitarian nature of the Mass. How we are in Christ worshiping the Father through the Spirit. So kind of going through the Mass. When are we talking to the Father? When are we talking to the Son? What is the Holy Spirit's role in the Mass? That way, I learned something about the Mass, which is nice. People always like learning about why do we do this every Sunday? Like, oh, here's kind of why you do it. And then I frame it around the Holy Trinity, so it gets that Holy Trinity part too.
So a little bit of a cop-out.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely, it's a cop-out. Yeah, I'm not ashamed of that.
Yeah.
How many heresies? 0.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Exactly. But it's interesting, and I liked y'all's conversation, and I actually agreed with it, despite me going the opposite direction.
Sure.
Because it's a context thing.
Yeah.
Y'all were talking about it in the context of a homily, which, like, and like, a homily for y'all is pretty typical to like a talk that I would go and give outcome wise.
Sure.
You want people to grow in their faith, have something they can take home, have something that they can connect to, like connecting to the Mass in that scenario. You're in Mass, it makes total sense, right? But this Foundations course is the most specifically systematic theology thing I've ever done. I've stepped into those, like an RCIA class is systematic theology. And I've stepped in and I've given like a talk or whatever. But this is the first time that I'm not just giving the talks, I'm responsible for like the whole course of it, right? Yeah. So I was like, so it's been different for me and a lot of fun. I actually think I enjoy teaching more than I enjoy evangelizing. Which is funny because most people, like, this shows a lot of evangelization, right? A lot of times when I go give talks, I'm emceeing or whatever, it's a lot of evangelization. But I noticed when I was a youth minister that I liked, you know, because you always have like your Sunday night, you know, it's like everybody, you know, everybody's there.
Yeah.
Like those were cool.
Sure.
But what I really liked was the Wednesday night, like we got it deeper. Like
going deeper thing.
that's actually where my skill set more lies. I've had to learn, I've been doing this for 12 years, so I've had to learn how to do evangelization better. Right. But like my skill set and my heart is actually more in the catechesis.
Fascinating. I did not know that about you.
Right. I hide things very well. Catechetical podcasts are boring. So that's why this, it's like I just got to go, I want to go where the people are. But like I'm super enjoying this. But this was the first time that I had to give a catechetical talk on the Trinity.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting for me, and I had a long conversation with Jennifer, the person who's been helping me out, and who was there that night to fact check me.
Yeah,
I talked to her after, and I was like, it felt so. I looked out at them, and like my whole thing is like being entertaining and all this stuff. I looked out at a group of shell shocked human beings. They were just like you could just tell that I blew their minds. Like they were like, it was like, this is so much information, and it's like super heady. But it was interesting because I was like, did I make a mistake? Like, did I talk too much about the catechetical stuff? And nobody left for about an hour and 20 minutes after.
Wow.
And everybody was talking about it.
Okay.
Like
cool.
asking questions and being like, I hadn't heard that or whatever. Or, I was taught this heresy. Oh, I was taught this heresy.
Yes, exactly.
We went through a lot of them or whatever. And it's the longest anybody stayed in the 4 weeks that we've been doing this. And so it was so cool to do something different than what I normally do.
Yeah.
And even though I kind of felt weird about it, it was like, oh no, it was nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So some of the heresies. What's your favorite Trinitarian heresy? Do you have one?
Oh my goodness. I could, I used to be able to name. I had to name all these things to.
You don't have to do the right name. I'm putting you on the spot. But
okay, yeah.
The idea.
A lot of them around Christ. So the fact that Jesus isn't a part of the Trinity, that Jesus was just a very special creation, like the best creation.
That's me.
Yeah, that's you.
I'm a special creation. Jesus is God.
God is one, and he just appears as Father, appears as Son, appears as Holy Spirit. So he's like
modalism.
A blob. Modalism. That's modalism, Patrick. And then so you
yes. We watched that video.
Good, exactly. That's a good one. What other ones are there? There's all kinds of crazy ones with the Holy Spirit, where it proceeds from.
Dude, okay. So this is where.
Yeah.
This is where I think that is the hardest part of the Trinity.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the hardest part because one of the things that I was really like wrestling with, and like literally you can look and see you probably use that book. You can't see it right now, but it's like that book on my floor right now.
Yes.
It's my pastor's book.
Okay.
And I talked to him because this is a ministry in his parish.
Yeah.
I talked to him about it beforehand, and he's like, here's a book. And I was like, nice. And it was not only did it was what he used in seminary as a seminarian, he was also like the rector at the seminary for 6 years and training all of you people.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I read his book and I learned a lot about all these heresies. But what was I saying before the book?
You're gonna do. You were asking about my heresies, my favorite heresies.
Yeah.
And then Holy Spirit.
Oh yeah. So the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I realized that a lot of the heresies and I think the heresy that I believed was more either believed or had struggled with.
Yeah.
Was how is there a son that even for a split moment did not exist?
Even
if you're like, oh, he exists out of time, and just kind of how it's like, but okay. But even if I can get behind that, right? Because that's the consubstantial with the Father, of the same substance, of the same
eternally begotten.
Yeah, which is so weird. Like,
super weird.
Literally, begotten is not begotten, not made, begotten, not born. It was like literally the verbiage that they used to go against one of the primary heresies.
Yeah,
right. It's like, okay, if I can get behind that,
sure.
But then something I had never heard was. We say the creed and there's words there.
Yes, there are.
quite literally, they made up a word. The correct term for how the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, that's the English word. Yeah. The correct term is spirates.
Yeah.
Spiration.
Yeah.
I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I think I know what the root word of spirate is. Spirit.
Oh, yeah. He spirits from the Father.
But literally, they made up a word to try to make the Trinity make sense.
Yeah, it's something about like breath.
Yeah. So he spirates from the Father, which that was the point where I was like, okay, nobody gets it.
Yes. I never talk about spirations.
They literally made up a word, and that's the only word that you can say that really isn't heresy.
Yeah.
And like, proceedeth is essentially a translation of that, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, if we're pulling a Shakespeare, like I don't have a word to say, we're gonna make one up.
Yeah.
What should we call it? Did you say spirit? No, it's inspiring. Oh, okay. But like even you, so I think it linearly because I'm a human being.
Right.
Right. So, I think initially I thought God the Father, and he was the Father throughout all the Old Testament. And then Jesus showed up in the, 2,000 years ago. And then 33 years later, he left and sent the Spirit.
Okay.
So just in my mind, like as a kid growing up,
right,
it was like, literally eternity. And then Jesus about 2,000 years ago. And then the Holy Spirit 33 years after that, whenever he left. And then I learned, like, okay, Jesus was the, we read John.
Yes.
Jesus was the Word, and the Word, like,
in the beginning
the Word
was the Word.
the bird is the Word.
Bird is the Word.
No, the bird is the Spirit.
That's how it works.
But so I was like, so then I learned, and I was like, okay, Jesus was there with the Father from the beginning. And then even I learned things like, like the Spirit hovered over the waters in the first couple of verses in Genesis, right? But there's still something about this linear thing that I still struggle with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, because you've heard before, like the love between the Father and the Son is the Holy Spirit, spirates the Spirit, right? Which it's really, and I've heard people compare that to marriage.
Yeah, sure.
Man and woman love each other. 9 months later, you get, it. And so I was like, well, it's. Analogies is where people get, people are like, here's a cauliflower or not a cauliflower.
A clover?
Clover! Here's a clover. And it's like, no, that's this one. You're splitting God into three. Yeah. They're all fully God. Maybe it's like water, or maybe it's like the sun, and they're like, those are all heresies, right? Yeah. And then, so we get to I was like, well, my kid took 9 months. Yeah. So that's a linear thing.
Yes.
But the Spirit.
Always there.
Always there. But also, the Father and the Son, there had to be love for the Spirit to come.
Yes, and that was always there.
So, it's the split seconds that still kind of confuse me.
Because there are no split seconds.
Right.
Yeah, it's super weird.
But there seem to be.
Right?
But so I learned a ton. And it's one of those things that, like, the more that we learn, it's this whole idea of mystery, right? A mystery in the church is something that we can know things about, but not know everything about, right? And this is the most studying, not only that I've ever done about the Trinity, this is the most studying I've ever done for a talk. Ever. Yeah. Like, it's not close. I spent half a day reading books. Yeah. Not like writing notes. Like, that's usually what I do is I sit down, I kind of like pull my notes and I do my bullet points and all this stuff. But most of the stuff is like, I know this, I'm speaking to it. No, I read books. I know how to do that. And I learned a ton, and I feel like I got so much closer in my knowledge of the Trinity, and I feel a lot more comfortable with it. But there's still this point of like, it still requires faith.
Yeah.
Mystery still requires faith because we're never going to fully understand it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay not to fully understand the Trinity. And if you think you do, you're wrong. So
right. Exactly.
Which is also kind of cool. It's like, God would be really boring if we could just read a book about him for a day and totally get it. Like, what would be the point of making a religion around that? That's boring. The fact that we can always dive deeper and learn more about God, I think, is what makes it interesting.
True.
Sure.
But I also like knowing things.
Yeah.
And the fact that I tried and still don't bothers me.
That's also good.
Yeah. But anyway, so, it was a 30-minute talk and I crammed it and was just, going through it. But it was good. It was good for me to do something different. It was good for me to learn. And then like the group responded very, very well, which I was surprised by. And it was so funny. I warned them going in. I was like, this is the like most fire hose thing we're going to do in our 10 weeks together. And they were like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move on to sacraments. And we did sacraments the next week. So final thoughts on the Trinity?
I'm for it.
I am too.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan, even of things I don't understand.
Yes. 3 thumbs up for the Trinity.
That was the most confusing thing you've ever done. You just said 3 thumbs up for the Trinity and did 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Well, but I have the other thumb on my shirt.
Yes.
So now we have 3. Now we have 3.
Good.
My shirt is the Trinity. Dang it, it's a heresy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We hit a huge milestone this week. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much. I'm really happy. What I did was I held all the kids at the Diocesan Conference hostage for lunch until they subscribed enough to where we hit 1,000. So thank you guys, all of you that have subscribed. Welcome to our new viewers and listeners. We've got some great stuff on the channel. I mentioned earlier that we had the cook-off between Father Leo and Bishop Toops. That is on our channel right now. We've got not full-length episodes of this show, so if you're listening on the podcast, you could always watch it over on YouTube. We've got our pop culture series on your favorite TV shows and movies, where we talk about it from a Catholic perspective, talks, and so much more. The final goal that we have to become partners on YouTube is just having watch hours, people watching the stuff that we have on our channel. So if you haven't already, go over, hit subscribe if you haven't already. That would be great. But also, watch what we have going on. We hope that you guys enjoy it. We make it for you. So thanks, guys, for getting us to 1,000. Y'all are the best. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Father Anthony Sciarappa. Mm-hmm. So something big happened in our nation last week.
It was my anniversary.
The Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal is another big one. Last week, what? I can't imagine anything. I didn't see anything in the news.
Yeah, no one's been upset about anything.
No.
Nobody's been happy about anything. It's just been a pretty normal week.
Yes.
Except for on Friday,
mm-hmm.
there was this celebration of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Oh, yes.
Which, ironically enough,
mm-hmm.
was the feast on the day that my wife and I got married.
Oh, fun.
Because also a week ago, we celebrated our 10 years of being married.
That's so long.
I know.
Good job.
I did it. But on this Sacred Heart of Jesus feast day, the government made a change.
Okay.
And I did not believe that this change would ever happen.
Okay.
Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Did it?
It sure did.
You would think I would have heard about that.
Yeah. You'd think maybe it's because you deleted all your social media. You don't know anything about what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And people could talk at length about, oh, this is great or this is bad, and everybody is talking everywhere in between, and everybody's seen all that, right? The big thing that I want to talk about, in regards to Roe v. Wade, there's 2. One is, I never believed this would happen.
Yeah.
Even to the point that I was very involved with the pro-life movement as a kid, and even through high school, and it's like in high school I started going to pray at outside Planned Parenthoods.
Yeah.
In college, when I was running college ministry, we would go at about once a week, at least a couple of times a month, and all these college students going to pray. So I would bring my friends, we would pray. We started I would sing the Divine Mercy Chaplet, play guitar and sing, and then I got trained as a sidewalk counselor, to go talk to young ladies, young men. Typically, if there was another person there, the ladies would talk to the ladies, I would talk to the guys.
Yeah,
literally trying to save these kids' lives.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it did not go well.
Sure.
And it got ugly, right?
Yeah.
But even though it was something that I had worked to for a while, I kind of distanced myself from the pro-life movement over the last, essentially after college, because it got pretty nasty. It was all just people yelling on both sides.
Yeah.
And when the good guys started just yelling and being mean, I was like, I don't really want to associate myself with this.
Sure.
I'm still pro-life.
Absolutely.
I made a lot of babies.
Yes, yes.
But I kind of distanced myself from the public movement.
Yeah.
And part of it was the ugliness, and then part of it was I realized since the time that this law has been changed that I believe that people's hearts can change. If I didn't, I wouldn't work in ministry. I wouldn't do the show. I wouldn't go and speak. I believe that people's hearts can change, and I know that primarily because it has happened to me. Yes. Right? I do not believe that societies can change. I don't.
Don't you believe they can get worse?
Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. I stand corrected. I sit corrected. I believe they can get worse.
Yes.
I don't believe societies can get holier or closer to the truth. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm mostly right. Sadly, I really do.
Yeah.
Society's gotten worse in almost every possible way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, cell phones are nice, but not at the cost of losing all of our morality.
Yeah.
Like, the more people you can know about, the worse people we get as a society.
Okay.
So like big organizations, I just don't think can get better.
Yeah.
Governments, big business, even has applied to the church.
Sure.
I've shared about that pretty publicly. Like not believing that the church as a whole, like could get holier.
Sure.
I don't think maybe it could stand pat, but like I still can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
Because it goes against everything that I've ever seen, learned about, and experienced in my entire life. I've read the whole story of salvation. People have always been, made good and then turned bad. Like I don't want to
all downhill from the start.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, yes, individuals can change, and we've seen that. But like so even think about like the Old Testament.
Yeah.
We saw individual hearts change.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, the Old Testament is the downfall of Israel.
Okay.
It's the downfall of the like. Did they rebound every now and then? Yes. Like the story of Judges is just them being taught like rolled down the toilet. Like they're just getting worse and worse. And then things got so bad that God had to send Himself to be killed on our behalf. And then what have we done since then? I saw a comedian the other day.
Yeah.
And he's an atheist, but it was very funny. He was talking about Jesus and Martin Luther King.
Okay.
And aliens come to our world, and they're like, "Hey, like, why is your society so bad or whatever?" Right? Yeah. And they're like, "Have you never had somebody like tell you to be good?" And, well, yeah, there was this guy 2,000 years ago. He told us to love God, to love our neighbors. He's like, "Really?
Yeah.
Only one guy 2,000 years ago?" He's like, "Well, about 60 years ago, there's another guy and said, like, hey, we need to love our neighbors. We need to love God."
Yeah.
And he's like, "It took that long between?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, did y'all listen to him?" And we're like, "No." They're like, "Well, what happened to him?" Well, like we killed the debate. And so I just did not believe that society can change. So I'm still kind of reeling at the fact that, now it all goes to the states and everything, but that like abortion doesn't have federal rights now.
Yep.
I cannot believe that happened.
Yeah, no, I was kind of in relatively the same camp. Like, I even when the draft was leaked, I was like, "Man, I'll believe it when I see it."
Right? Yeah.
And then I was going about my day doing stuff, getting ready for Sacred Heart and all this stuff on Friday, and it dropped that it was. And I was like, "Really?" I wanted to like check the internet to make sure it wasn't some kind of hoax or something like that, and it was. And it was even hard to be happy about it because it was so contrary to what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
Like I was like, is this real now? Is it? And then you would see some of the laws that were like these trigger laws that would go into effect right away, and like different states overturning abortion stuff. Like, is this really, really happening? And then part of it was also, because we immediately called the police to get people just to watch the church during the weekend. Nothing happened. Everyone was very well behaved. But it was one of those things that was kind of everyone was well behaved. Nobody busted into our church. Nobody. It was fine. It was fine.
I just like that well behaved is what you said in regards to what would have happened was either a shooting or vandalism.
Yes.
But you were well behaved.
That's all I want.
Very well behaved.
Everyone was very polite in my community. Okay. No big deal. But yeah, and it's tough to like because I tend to be cynical about things. But you also have to think about, okay, we both believe hearts can change, or else I wouldn't be a priest, you wouldn't be in the ministry, right? And societies can change technically, because if enough hearts change, then those hearts make up a society, and then the society can change.
But the thing, like literally the numbers back up the cynicism.
Yeah.
For every one Catholic that enters the church, 6 leave. So society's getting worse. And I don't want to sit here and say that Catholics make society better as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I've met a lot of you.
Sure.
But anyway.
I think we do have to hold on hope. Not that so you can get crazy with this. Because there is a part of people like, if we fix all these laws, then everything will be perfect. And there's another side where it's we can never be perfect, so we should never try.
That's me.
Yeah. Exactly. So you can't. Those two things are not good. But the main takeaway for me, and this is why I kind of preached about like saying, "Hey, this is good. Let's give thanks to God for this." But our work as a church has not changed at all, you know, because it's wonderful. Like if there was someone scheduled for abortion, now they can't have the abortion, that kid's going to live. That's great. But that mother and her situation is still a very difficult situation. We still have to go help them now, even more so, maybe. So we still have the same amount of work to do. So it's kind of like, this is good, thumbs up, but we got a lot of people to take care of as a church, you know, thumbs up. Yeah. But yeah, it is. It's been a not as joyful as I thought it would be for whatever reason.
Yeah. And the second thing that I've been focusing on is how well most people that I've seen in the church have responded.
Yeah.
My other assumption was that most people would just be gloating.
Yeah. Like,
Because that's what I've seen.
Yes. Yes.
Anytime any law gets passed, it's like, haha, you pro-choicers suck it. And it's just like, that's
not what we do here.
That's not what's happening, right?
Yeah.
But one crazy thing that kind of combines these two things of can societies change, can hearts change, and the second thing that I've been focusing on is how well primarily the two fathers, the two clerics that I saw speak about this, how well it was handled.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, when it got announced, I think I mentioned it earlier, I was at the Diocesan Youth Conference of Diocese of Beaumont, and it got announced like minutes before Mass, and Bishop Toops was not planning on preaching on this, and then he preached and connected the readings and the Sacred Heart to the news, and he preached about the news, and then he did one of those, like what I love, like the second homily, like right before the final blessing, right?
Yeah.
And just as like a reminder, and I loved it because I was sitting there knowing I've worked with young people enough to know most of the young people in that room are pro-choice.
Mm-hmm.
They are. I just heard some stats the other day that were it was college students in Nebraska, which, you know, you can't. It was a study specifically done on college students in Nebraska, but Catholic schools and secular schools, and you know, so it's not. It does not. Those stats do not necessarily apply to the rest of the U.S.
Right,
it's pretty close.
Sure,
80% of them.
Wow,
were pro-choice. 80. And like that matches with my experience because I'm a millennial. I'm 32 years old. Most of my contemporaries are pro-choice.
Yeah, sure.
Like friends that I grew up with, people that I know. Like my social media feed is filled with pro-choice people that I care about.
Yeah.
Right. And seeing the response of the young people because of how fatherly Bishop Toops was gave me this, like my cold little heart opened just a little bit to like, oh. Can less than 80% of the people in the next 4 years, the people in this room, in 4 years, can less than 80% of them be pro-choice? And I was like, maybe there's a little hope. Yeah. That maybe 10% of them swung that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. And then secondarily, on Sunday, my pastor, who I've talked about at length, has practically saved my faith because of all the crap that happened the last couple of his position. He preached on Sunday, and it's the best homily I've heard him give in the year that he's been here.
Nice, that's good.
Because, again, it was so fatherly. He connected it to the Sacred Heart. He was pointing at the statue of the Sacred Heart that we have. He connected it to that. He connected it to the readings of the day. And then he spoke for a long time, talking about why this is good and how this is good. Yeah. And then the last 2 minutes of his homily was connecting it back to the Sacred Heart and how much Jesus loves us. Yeah. But like the 5 minute, the real close was like 4 or 5 minutes where he had, I'm getting goosebumps, where he addressed the people in the congregation that were saddened or upset by the decision.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I don't think I've ever, I have never seen that in a Catholic context. Yeah. It's always been, let's talk about the truth and let's, hammer home the truth, which is a great thing. It's a great thing, right? But when moments like this happen, just imagine pro-choice people who are Catholic, that sit in the pews, right? Yeah. And I hate when people say that they're not Catholic, right? Because there are doctrines that I struggle with. Sure. They're just different ones, right? I'm still Catholic, right? But he was able to address and pastor his flock. Yeah. Even the people that disagree with this pretty important doctrine in the church, and I loved it so much. It was so good.
It is good. It's because a lot of times with this issue, we are so quick to draw battle lines. And like, don't get me wrong, there's truth and there is error and all that stuff. But like the fact that your pastor was like, these are the people I have in front of me. These are the people I have to care for, and I'm going to care for them without sacrificing the truth. Like, yes, that's what we need to be doing.
Right.
And that's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah, it was great. And so he even went through some of the like pretty typical pro-choice arguments, and was like not ripping them to shreds for the point of ripping to shreds, but was like sharing. You know, like, here's what I would say. Here's what the church says about it. And the one that I had never thought of, which I think maybe because it's new, maybe it's not the best argument, but for me it's the best argument currently because it's one of the newer ones that I've heard. Was that when Roe v. Wade was passed, I think it was 1973, 72, something like right around the early 70s. Just how much science has changed since then. And one of the big pro-choice arguments is that, you know, it's just a clump of cells. It's just a blob of cells. And he pointed out something I'd never thought about. He said, science in the 70s, when this was passed, what would you look at when you saw a baby in the ultrasound? You would see a blob of cells.
Yeah.
You would see a clump of cells.
Yeah.
That's literally what they could see. Yeah. And he was like, now when we do sonograms, when we look at the baby, you see feet, you see sparks of life, you see movement, you see leap, you see all this stuff, even at those young ages, where like literally science is like every science textbook says that life begins at conception. Right. And like that opened my eyes to like, oh my goodness. Like, because you know, the famous thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but Augustine said that abortion was okay for the first 3 months.
Because he didn't think it was a lie. He was basing it off the science they had at the time.
The science and the knowledge they had at the time, right? And so even, you know, that was many, many years ago. But, you know, in the 70s, it looked like a clump of cells. So that's what they called it. Yeah. But that argument doesn't stand anymore because we can see that it's not just that, because those clump of cells, when you have a better camera and can zoom in, that's a foot with toes. You know, like, And it was a fascinating thing because I just never thought about it or heard about it. Yeah. How even the scientific findings are helping to bolster the pro-life argument.
Yeah. I think it's so hard to actually have a conversation about this because we're so invested in it. But I think the two big questions are, when does life begin and what's the value of life? Those are the two questions. Like, because at conception, there is, I think, scientifically speaking, there is life. That clump of cells or that zygote or whatever, it's not a frog. It's not a bird. It's a human being. Okay, it might be a terribly uninteresting.
It's Superman.
It's a Superman. No, it might be a terribly uninteresting human being. You might not be able to have a conversation. That's
what most of them grow up to.
Right, exactly. Okay. So, but all that aside, what's the value of human life? And to actually kind of deal with those sort of things, I think is important conversations to have. There's just, there's so much emotional energy wrapped up about this. I think one of the errors that pro-lifers make is to not take difficult situations seriously. To not have empathy for those difficult situations. Doesn't mean you have to say that abortion's okay. It's still not. But let's not pretend that some of these situations are incredibly difficult. And some of the examples that can happen are incredibly tragic, right? Let's not pretend that they're not. So I think a lot of empathy goes a long way in this conversation.
The last thing that I want to say, and I'll give you a chance to have your last word as well. But it was something that I heard multiple times. I got goosebumps again. I've heard this multiple times all growing up. And the reason that I didn't think that anything would change was because literally since I've been born, it's only gotten worse. Like the pro-choice movement has been winning every step of the way until Friday. Yeah. So it's like, why would I believe any differently? Because literally all of my life experience points towards the opposite. And so I heard this statement that I'll share in a second dozens of times before Roe v. Wade was overturned. And that statement was that 30% of my peers are not here. And because we were playing a losing game, I never really let myself wrestle with that. I just couldn't think about it because I knew that, like, if I open that door, it's going to be too tough to deal with. And then my pastor, when he was preaching, it's one of the things that he mentioned. I got tears in my eyes. Yeah. It's one of the things that he mentioned on Sunday was he goes, look around. He said, people from, he's in his mid-40s. He's like, from my generation to now, like younger than him, 30% of us don't exist. And I was just like, the friends I could have had, I could have dated better people in high school. I needed to laugh because I was about to cry.
Yeah.
The friends I could have had, the people that could be doing great things just aren't there. And he's like, look around the church. Like our church was about 30% not full.
Yeah.
Like, obviously that's not an exact thing, but like
Sure.
it hit, And I finally let myself kind of think about that. And it was just like incredibly saddening, but at the same time, like I had just accepted that that's how life was.
Yeah.
That for my life, for my kids' life, that's how it was going to be. And the fact that that number will go down. How much, I think, remains to be seen. But
Sure.
it will go down, at least for a time.
Yeah.
It cracked open my little hardened heart.
Yeah.
Just a little bit again, to where like it's so sad thinking about it. 30%, like there were like 1,000 people in my graduating class.
Yeah.
There should have been 1,300.
Yeah.
And it's just, man, it hit me.
Yeah, and it's tough because a lot of times as a parish priest, the most difficult people to deal with in your parish are the pro-lifers, because not always, but a lot of times they are some of the angriest people that I know. And the reason why they are is because I think they get so wrapped up in that reality, like the incredible numbers of those who are aborted, which we believe are human lives. And that evil can be so overwhelming that it can harden your heart in some ways.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can totally obsess over it. I will say, on the other hand, there always are wonderful pro-lifers who aren't giving you a hard time. But you see this sort of thing where people are kind of broken by the evil. And it's a very hard thing to look at. And I always think about like, hey, you know why this is so hard to talk about or why it's so hard to convince people? Imagine you really, really think that abortion is a human right that without which you cannot be respected or you cannot be equal, right? You actually believe that. And to find out that the reality is that abortion is ending an innocent human life. What would that do to your soul to have that realization? And would the church be able to be there to help you through that, to help you receive mercy and love and forgiveness and healing? So throwing barbs on the internet, you're not taking the issue seriously. You're just not. So I'm glad to hear your pastor and the bishop talking with love and compassion about something that's really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So, I don't believe societies could change, but my little heart was changed a little bit over the last few days. So, love you guys. This has been, we had fun for a little bit. And a little harder at the end, but we did it. We did a Father Anthony in Texas episode. It was very fun. Yeah. So, thank you guys for watching and listening today. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll be back next week. See ya. Thank y'all for watching and listening today. We hope that you enjoyed it. We had an absolute blast. Father Anthony is currently over playing Destiny 2 on my Xbox, hopefully enjoying himself while I am wrapping up the show. If you enjoyed it, again, please hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Leave a review, leave a comment, all the things. Y'all are the best. I love you. See you soon.